My friends, when God moves, he rarely moves in the way we expect. We often long for him to shout from the heavens, to split the skies with thunder and lightning, to write his plans across the stars. But more often than not, he whispers. He stirs within the quiet chambers of the soul, in the small nudges of conviction, in the stillness before the dawn. And yet, there are moments when the air itself feels heavy with anticipation, when every step of your journey has been preparing you for something beyond your imagination. Perhaps you have felt it too, that restlessness of spirit, that sense that life as you have known it is about to shift. This is not a random stirring. It is the voice of God reminding you, something big is about to happen in your life. But let me tell you this, it will not always come in the wrapping you expect. God's blessings rarely come as glittering prizes dropped into our hands. Sometimes they arrive disguised as trials. Sometimes they look like doors closing, like friendships fading, like paths being blocked. But what feels like loss is often the first stone laid in the foundation of a greater future. You see, we are like children clutching broken toys, unwilling to let them go, not realizing our Father is reaching out with something far better. When you walk through darkness, when your prayers seem to echo unanswered, it is not because God has abandoned you. It is because he is preparing you. Like a gardener, he clears the ground before planting. Like a craftsman, he sharpens the tools before using them. Like a teacher, he tests before promoting. That ache in your soul, that longing for something more, that is not despair, it is preparation. So do not mistake waiting for wasting. The delay is not denial, it is the pause before the unveiling. God is aligning people, circumstances, and opportunities in ways you cannot see. He is weaving a story that, from your viewpoint, looks like tangled threads, but from his it is a masterpiece. The greatest transformations happen when we least expect them. A fisherman mending his nets became the rock of a new faith. A shepherd boy overlooked by his family became a king. A wandering exile became the leader of nations. And you who feel unseen, overlooked, perhaps weary, are being prepared for something greater than your eyes can yet perceive. So lift your head. Do not despise the process. Do not surrender to fear. For when God speaks a promise, the earth must yield, doors must open, chains must break. Something big is indeed about to happen in your life, not because of who you are, but because of who he is. And when it comes, you will understand why the waiting was necessary, why the tears were gathered, why the silence was holy, for every step has been leading here to the moment when God's plan becomes your reality. God often works in silence and whispers, preparing us for what we cannot yet see. We live in a world that craves noise, certainty, and immediate answers. We look for signs in the sky, in the crowd, in the sudden miracle that will announce the hand of God. Yet more often, his presence is wrapped in the quiet moments of our lives, hidden in the pauses that we rush to escape. The silence of God is not absence, but presence in its deepest form. It is a kind of stillness that speaks louder than thunder if we are willing to lean in and listen. Think of the ways a whisper works. It does not demand attention like a shout. It requires closeness, intimacy, and attentiveness. If someone whispers, you must draw near. You must quiet your own voice to hear theirs. This is often the way God works. He does not thunder to overwhelm, but whispers to invite. It is not because he is weak, but because he desires relationship. He wants you to come close enough to catch the soft word of reassurance, the gentle nudge that shifts your steps, the almost unnoticed stirring that tells you he is leading. When we do not see what lies ahead, it is easy to become restless. The future feels like a closed curtain, and our prayers feel like unanswered letters. But what if the silence is God's way of preparing us? What if the unseen is not emptiness but groundwork? Consider the seed buried in the soil. The earth is quiet above it, the surface shows nothing, but beneath the darkness roots are being formed. This silence of the soil is not lifeless. It is full of hidden activity that ensures the seed will one day break through. So it is with God's work in us. While we are asking, why is nothing happening? God is answering, everything is happening, but you cannot see it yet. In our impatience, we often miss the sacredness of God's whisper. We think significance must be loud, dramatic, undeniable. but the greatest shifts in life are often born in unseen moments, a change of heart, a conviction in prayer, a subtle redirection of desire. God rarely forces his way into our choices. Instead, he shapes them slowly, like a sculptor refining stone. Each quiet nudge, each pause, each delay is part of his preparation. We expect the voice of God to come like fire from the mountain, but many times it comes like the still small voice that met the weary prophet in the cave. The whisper also has a purpose. It teaches trust. If God gave us everything in obvious, dazzling signs, we would not learn to walk by faith. We would not need to cultivate patience, nor would we learn to quiet the noise within ourselves. The whisper draws us to maturity. It asks us to live by trust rather than sight, to walk steadily even when the path ahead is not lit by bright lamps, but by a single step of faith. It is in the silence that our roots grow deep. It is in the waiting that our hearts are stretched to believe. It is in the whisper that we learn to discern his voice amid the clamor of all others. And so, the preparation is not just about the future event God has planned for you. It is about the shaping of who you are now. The unseen preparation is as important as the seen blessing. A tree that grows too quickly without roots will topple in the storm, but one that is formed slowly in seasons of silence will stand firm no matter the winds. God prepares us in the same way. He allows us to dwell in silence so that when the weight of his plan rests upon us, we will not collapse under it. The whispers and the quiet seasons are not delays. They are foundations. They form character, endurance, and faith. Often we resist the whisper because it does not satisfy our desire for clarity. We want the grand plan laid out, the map unfolded, every question answered. But God is not simply giving us directions. He is shaping our dependence on him. He whispers so that we will keep walking close. He whispers so that we cannot rush ahead or stray too far behind. He whispers because he wants to guide us step by step, not from a distance but from a place of nearness. The very quietness that frustrates us is the thing that binds us closer to him. When you look back on your life, you may realize that some of the most important changes did not come with fireworks or announcements, but with whispers you almost missed. That job you lost that led you to something better, that friendship that faded which made room for deeper relationships, that unanswered prayer that redirected you towards something more fitting. These were whispers of God. At the time, they may have felt like silence or even abandonment, but they were the quiet hands of a father arranging the details of your life. God's whispers are also a test of attention. They ask, will you listen? Will you slow down enough to notice? The world will always be louder, demanding your focus, drowning out the still small voice. But if you lean into the whisper, if you trust the silence, you will find that God has been preparing you for something far greater than you imagined. His whisper is not a sign of weakness, but a mark of intimacy. His silence is not a void, but the stage upon which his plan is being set. His preparation may be invisible to your eyes, but it is more real than anything you can see. Trials and losses are not setbacks, but disguised foundations for greater blessings. It is a difficult truth to accept because, in the moment, pain does not feel like a gift. Loss does not look like a blessing. Trials rarely appear as the hand of God at work. Instead, they come wrapped in disappointment, in heartbreak, in confusion. They come as the closed door we prayed would open, as the relationship that crumbled, as the dream that slipped through our grasp. To the human eye, these moments look like failure, but to the eyes of faith, they are building blocks of something much greater. Every trial is like a fire, and fire has two effects. It destroys what is weak, and it refines what is strong. Gold does not shine in its raw state. It must pass through the furnace where impurities are burned away. In the same way, God uses trials not to destroy us, but to strip away what holds us back, what weighs us down, what keeps us from being who he designed us to be. We ask for growth, for strength, for maturity, but we rarely realize these virtues are forged in the furnace of struggle. Without trials, we remain untested, unprepared for the weight of future blessings. Loss is another form of preparation. We see it only as subtraction, but in the economy of God, loss often clears the ground for addition. Think of the farmer who prunes a tree. To the casual observer, it looks like destruction, cutting away healthy branches. But the pruning is not punishment, it is preparation for fruitfulness. The tree, once pruned, grows back stronger, fuller, and more productive. In the same way, the losses we endure may feel like God taking from us, but in truth He is making room for something far greater to flourish. A friendship that fades may open the way for a deeper relationship. A job that ends may redirect us toward a higher calling. A dream that shatters may prepare us to receive a vision that aligns more perfectly with His purpose. The pain of trials and losses often blinds us to their purpose. We cry out, asking why we must endure such heaviness, not realizing that the very weight we carry is strengthening us to stand taller. A muscle does not grow without resistance. A tree does not sink deep roots without storms. Likewise, the soul does not mature without being pressed, stretched, and tested. It is in the breaking that strength is formed, in the loss that resilience is born, in the struggle that faith is proven. If life were always smooth, we would remain shallow. It is hardship that deepens us. History and Scripture alike testify that those who carried the greatest blessings first carried great burdens. Joseph was betrayed and imprisoned before he was elevated to power. Ruth endured widowhood and poverty before being grafted into a lineage of kings. Even the disciples knew loss and persecution before they carried the message of hope to the world. Their stories remind us that the road to blessing is not straight and easy, but winding and narrow, paved with hardship that prepares the heart for what lies ahead. And yet, in the midst of trials, we are tempted to believe that God has abandoned us. Pain whispers that we are forgotten, that our prayers are ignored, that our struggle is meaningless, but this is the great deception of suffering. It makes us think we are standing still when, in reality, we are being built. The very things we think will break us are often the things that shape us most powerfully. Every trial leaves behind a gift if we are willing to see it: wisdom, compassion, endurance, humility, or a faith that cannot be shaken. Loss, too, carries hidden gifts. When we lose, we are forced to let go of control. We learn dependence on God in ways we never would have if everything had gone according to our plans. We realize that our worth is not found in possessions, achievements, or relationships, but in the one who gives and takes away according to His wisdom. Loss reminds us that what we cling to here is temporary, that our treasure must be higher than what this world can offer. And in that realization we find freedom, a loosening of the chains that tie us to what cannot last. The foundation of greater blessings is rarely laid in comfort. Comfort builds contentment, but trials build capacity. Loss clears space for abundance. Struggle builds strength for stewardship. God does not waste pain. Every tear, every disappointment, every valley walked is repurposed into the very stones that will hold up the blessing to come. We may not see it at the time, but when we look back, the pattern becomes clear. The darkest chapters were necessary to write the story of victory. The heaviest weights were the very tools that carved resilience. The things we thought were curses were, in truth, foundations for blessings we could not yet imagine. And so, trials and losses are not signs of God's rejection, but of His careful construction. They are not barriers to blessing, but bridges to it. They strip away what cannot carry the weight of the future and lay down what can. They turn us into people who are not just recipients of blessings, but stewards of them, capable of handling the greater things God has prepared. What looks like ruin is often the beginning of rebuilding. What feels like the end is often the start of something far greater. Waiting is not wasting. God uses delay as divine preparation. We are creatures of urgency, always longing for quick answers and immediate results. We measure our lives by clocks and calendars, always calculating how much time has passed and how much we think remains. But God does not move according to our timetable. His ways are higher, His seasons are deeper, and His purposes are woven with a patience that feels strange to us. Waiting to human eyes seems like inactivity, like wasted potential, like silence stretched too long. Yet in the hands of God, waiting is never empty. It is a workshop, a classroom, a sacred ground where unseen preparations are made. When God asks us to wait, He is not withholding arbitrarily. He is shaping us, aligning circumstances, and teaching us what cannot be learned in the rush. The seed does not sprout the moment it is planted. It must endure a season beneath the soil, unseen and unnoticed, but not forgotten. Roots are forming in the dark before the stem reaches for the light. In the same way, what feels like delay in your life is often the hidden season where roots of character, faith, and endurance are sinking deep enough to sustain the growth that will come. Without this unseen work, the blessing would arrive too soon, and we would not be able to carry it. Consider how often in life we pray for open doors, yet God first leads us into hallways of waiting. Those hallways test our patience, reveal our motives, and strip away our illusions of control. They are uncomfortable because in waiting we confront our own restlessness, our own doubt, our own fear that maybe nothing will happen after all. But those very confrontations are the tools of growth. They refine us. They expose what must be surrendered. They teach us that our hope is not in the swiftness of the answer, but in the faithfulness of the one who answers in his time. Waiting also allows the external pieces of God's plan to align. We often imagine our story as the only one unfolding, but in truth it is woven with countless others. God is not only preparing you, He is preparing the people you will meet, the opportunities that will arise, the doors that will swing open. To bring these elements together requires timing far beyond what we can see. What feels to us like a frustrating pause is, in reality, the orchestration of countless details in a divine symphony. When the music finally swells, we will see that every rest and pause was necessary for the harmony to be complete. The delay is also a protection. Sometimes we long for things we are not ready to carry. We believe we are prepared when in truth our strength has not yet been tested. A gift given too soon can crush instead of bless. Imagine handing a sharp blade to a child who has not yet learned responsibility. The tool is good, but the timing is wrong, so it is with God's blessings. They are never denied, but they may be delayed until we have the maturity, humility, and resilience to steward them well. The waiting is not a punishment, it is mercy. It ensures that when the answer comes, it will not destroy us but lift us. Waiting also reveals what we value. If the blessing takes longer than expected, will we still trust God, or will we chase shortcuts? The wilderness is the place where motives are tested. Israel wandered for years, not because God could not deliver them, but because the people had to be shaped before they could inherit the promise. The delay exposed their hearts, revealed their faithlessness, and tested their endurance. For us, too, seasons of waiting reveal whether we love God for who He is or only for what He gives. They strip away conditional faith and replace it with a deeper trust that endures regardless of circumstances. Waiting refines perspective. In the rush of desire, we often fix our hearts on what we think we want. But time has a way of clarifying. What you thought was essential may lose its grip. What you thought was unbearable may teach you strength. In waiting, God reshapes our desires until they align more closely with His. Many times, by the time the answer comes, we are no longer the same people who asked. We have grown, shifted, and matured in ways that make us ready not only to receive, but to appreciate and steward the blessing with wisdom. The delay also builds gratitude. Quick answers often breed entitlement, but delayed answers cultivate appreciation. When you wait and hunger for something, you recognize its value in a deeper way. You no longer take it for granted. When the blessing comes, it does not feel casual, it feels sacred, weighty, worth treasuring. Gratitude grows in the soil of waiting, and gratitude ensures that blessings do not become idols but remain gifts that point us back to the giver. Most importantly, waiting keeps us close to God. If every prayer were answered immediately, we would not seek Him, we would seek only His gifts. But when answers tarry, we learn to remain in His presence for the sake of His presence. We learn to draw near, to listen, to lean, to trust in the unseen hand that guides us. The waiting becomes holy not because of what we eventually receive, but because of who we become in the process. What looks like tangled threads to us is a masterpiece in God's design. From our perspective, life often feels like a confusing weave of joys and sorrows, beginnings and endings, triumphs and failures. We look at the events that unfold and try to make sense of them as if each moment were a finished picture. Yet, standing so close, all we see are knots, frayed edges, and colors that do not seem to belong together. We question why certain things had to happen, why prayers were not answered the way we asked, why opportunities opened only to close again. To us, it feels messy, unfinished, even chaotic. But from God's vantage point, every thread has a place, every knot has a purpose, every line of color contributes to a larger pattern that only He can see. When an artist weaves a tapestry, the back is filled with twists and loose ends. It looks disordered, without beauty or meaning, but turn it around and the picture emerges, intricate, intentional, breathtaking. This is how God works with the story of our lives. We live on the underside of the tapestry, staring at tangled threads, while He sees the finished work from above. What looks to us like brokenness is often part of a design too vast for our present understanding. We interpret events as random, but nothing is wasted in His hands. Even the strands of pain and loss are woven with precision, adding depth and color to the final image. The challenge lies in trust. We want to see the design now. We want clarity, resolution, a clear picture of where all the threads are leading. But faith requires us to accept that not everything can be seen in the moment. Trust is believing that the weaver knows what he is doing even when the pattern makes no sense to us. This trust is not blind optimism, it is grounded in the character of the one weaving. A child may not understand why a parent makes certain choices, but trust grows from knowing the parent's love. In the same way, even when we do not understand the pattern, we can trust the heart of the one creating it. The tangled threads often appear in seasons of disappointment. We pour effort into something only to watch it unravel. We cling to relationships that dissolve. We strive toward goals that collapse beneath us. Each unraveling feels like wasted time, wasted energy, wasted hope. But within the larger pattern, those threads are not wasted at all. They are rerouted, redirected, repurposed into a design greater than the one we imagined. The detours we resist are often the very paths that lead us to fulfillment. The broken places add contrast that highlights the beauty of what remains. Even suffering has its place in the masterpiece. Without darker threads, the picture would lack depth and dimension. Joy shines brighter against the backdrop of sorrow. Strength stands out more vividly when shaped by struggle. Compassion grows deeper when watered by tears. What we would never choose for ourselves often becomes the very thing that shapes us most beautifully. We see only the pain of the thread being pulled tight, but God sees the harmony it creates in the pattern as a whole. There are moments when we catch glimpses of this design. Looking back, we realize that what once felt like chaos was, in fact, necessary. The job loss that redirected us toward a greater calling. The closed door that spared us from harm. The heartbreak that taught us resilience and prepared us for love that endures. These glimpses remind us that God's hand has always been at work, even when we were too close to see. And if He has been faithful in the past, we can trust Him in the present. It is easy to lose faith when all we can see are the knots. We are tempted to cut the threads, to give up on the pattern entirely. But patience reveals what haste obscures. The masterpiece is not complete yet, and judging it too soon blinds us to its true beauty. What feels incomplete now is still in progress. The artist is not finished. Every moment, every choice, every hardship, every joy is being woven with purpose. This perspective changes the way we carry our struggles. Instead of seeing them as meaningless, we can begin to see them as essential strands. Instead of resenting the knots, we can trust that they are holding the pattern together. Instead of despising the darker colors, we can believe they are making the brighter ones shine more vividly. We may not like every part of the process, but we can rest in the assurance that the process itself is leading to something breathtaking. Life is not a series of disconnected fragments. It is a tapestry, and we are not the weavers but the threads. Our task is not to control the design, but to remain in the hands of the one who weaves. We may never fully see the finished picture this side of eternity, but one day the threads will be turned, and what now seems tangled will be revealed as a work of art. Every loss, every triumph, every tear, every joy will take its rightful place in a pattern that was never random but always guided by the wisdom of God. When God's promise unfolds, doors open, chains break, and purpose is revealed. For long seasons it may seem as if nothing is happening, as if your prayers are echoing in silence and your efforts are met with resistance. Yet when the appointed time arrives, everything shifts. What once felt immovable suddenly moves. What was shut without explanation swings wide, and what held you captive loses its power to bind you. The unfolding of God's promise is not a gradual suggestion, but a decisive breakthrough. It carries a weight that cannot be denied because it is not dependent on human strength or cleverness, but on divine authority. When God opens a door, no hand can close it. You may have tried to force it open in your own strength, pushing against the barriers until your heart grew weary. But when His timing comes, the same door that resisted all your efforts will swing effortlessly before you. Opportunities that once seemed unreachable suddenly make their way to your path. Connections you could never orchestrate begin to form. The very obstacles that once stood like mountains are flattened before you. It becomes clear that what is happening is not coincidence but providence. Chains break as well when God's promise comes to life. These chains may not always be physical, but can be chains of fear, of shame, of addiction, of doubt, of failure that lingers like a shadow. For years you may carry them, believing they are permanent, but the moment God speaks freedom, they shatter. What once bound you loses its hold because no chain forged by man or circumstance can withstand the power of His word. The breaking of chains is more than liberation from something painful. It is release into something purposeful. Freedom is not just escape, but the ability to walk into the destiny that was always waiting. Purpose reveals itself most clearly in the unfolding of promise. Beforehand, life may feel like a puzzle with missing pieces. You go through seasons of confusion, wondering why certain things happened, why certain prayers seemed unanswered, why certain detours took place. But when God's promise arrives, those scattered pieces begin to fit. The trials that once seemed meaningless take on new significance as preparation. The delays that once felt cruel reveal themselves as perfect timing. Even the losses that once left you broken show themselves as part of the shaping needed for the role you are now ready to embrace. Purpose has a way of turning hindsight into clarity. God's unfolding often comes suddenly. Years of waiting can change in a single moment. Think of the stories of old, the prisoner who became a ruler overnight, the shepherd boy called to be king, the barren woman who held a child after years of longing. Each story carries the same rhythm, long preparation followed by sudden fulfillment. This rhythm teaches us that the waiting is never wasted and the suddenness is never random. God knows the exact moment when the promise must break through, and when it does, nothing can resist it. There is also a peace that comes with His unfolding. When we force doors open in our own strength, even success feels fragile, as if it could vanish at any moment. But when God opens the way, there is a stability, a deep assurance that what He has given will remain. The opportunities are not built on manipulation or striving, but on grace. The freedom is not temporary relief, but permanent transformation. The purpose is not a vague idea, but a clear calling that resonates in the depths of who you are. Sometimes the unfolding surprises us because it does not look like what we imagined. We expect one kind of door, but God opens another. We anticipate freedom in one area, but He releases us in a different, deeper way. We think our purpose will be found in one direction, but He leads us somewhere unexpected. The unfolding is not about fulfilling our limited vision, but about revealing His greater one. It exceeds our imagination because it is not bound by what we thought possible. The evidence of God's unfolding is undeniable. Others notice it too. Those who once doubted may be left in awe. Those who saw only your struggle are now witnesses to your breakthrough. The transformation speaks louder than words, because only God could orchestrate it. The testimony of your life becomes a light to others, reminding them that their own waiting, their own trials, their own tangled threads are also part of a story still being written, and yet the promise is never just for personal gain. When God opens doors, it is so you may walk through them carrying light for others. When chains break, it is so you can lead others to freedom. When purpose is revealed, it is so your life becomes an instrument in a greater plan that touches more lives than your own. The unfolding is both a gift and a responsibility. It calls you not only to rejoice but to steward, not only to receive but to give, not only to walk free but to help others find freedom. The unfolding of God's promise is the moment when everything begins to make sense, when years of waiting and enduring are redeemed in a single act of grace. It is not something you can manufacture, nor something you can accelerate. It comes only by His hand in His time for His glory, but when it comes it changes everything.